Welcome to Talking Halos. This is Derek Ciapala with my co-host, my partners in crime, Nate Green and Jared Timms. We're here to talk a little bit of Angels baseball, and specifically, we want to cover some off-season questions, thankfully provided by Rhett Bollinger over at MLB.com. And what exactly is the plan for the Angels this offseason? We're going to cover some things we've already covered a little bit, but we're trying to take a different angle with it because, quite frankly, we don't want to bore you, and we don't want to waste your time. So right away, you can find the article on MLB.com, numerous questions. But first things first, before we even go there, Jared, how you doing?
Not too bad. Not too
Not too
bad.
bad. Nate,
Yeah, doing all right. It's
doing all
good.
right? We feeling better about things now? The season's over, had a week to breathe.
Yeah, I think there's always hope when the off season hits, so it's dangerous.
Dangerous to have a little bit of hope.
Hmm.
Well, if you watch The Shawshank Redemption, a little bit of hope can be a good thing, right? Just saying. So there were a series of questions here. We kind of want to respond to them a little bit. One of the first questions asks, how much are they looking to spend in free agency? And he makes the point there are numerous free agents out there. Juan Soto, which is someone Jared Timms here has talked a bit about. Alex Bregman, starting pitchers Corbin Burns, Blake Snell, Max Fried. Um, but even Bollinger notes that there is no guarantee that the Angels will really dig into the free agent pool. I think they will. The question is who they target. How deep will they wade in? So going to you, Nate, make a prediction. Where do you think they go here?
Interesting that two of the free agent pitchers that I think would make sense for the Angels weren't on here. Jack Flaherty and Shane Bieber would be two guys that make sense, both SoCal guys. Um, so I I think that would be I think they go that route where you go get a guy that can be an ace but isn't going to cost Corbin Burns or Blake Snell money. I think Jack Flaherty will come in probably a little bit under Max Fried, maybe right about Max Fried's number, just because he's a little bit younger. But I think that's the route the Angels go is they have to spend money. I think one thing Artie realized this year as it went on was that he made probably just about the same in revenue money. What not when you consider like the advertisement and all that stuff, but like gate fees and stuff like that was probably pretty close to what he normally makes. So he kind of I think he's at a point where he's like, okay, we can spend a little bit more money and get close to that 200 mil range. I don't think he goes as high as he did with Otani's last year, but he does get close to that 200 mil, maybe even that 215 range.
Jared?
Yeah, I do think that they're going to spend what they're going to do with it. It's going to be interesting. I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you're going to need a center fielder. I tend to like to think the Harrison Bader route. I know he didn't have a great defensive season, but I tend to think the Harrison Bader route. Already mentioned, you know, Anthony Rendon doesn't have a spot technically. I mean, he does, but he's got to have to earn a spot. You still need that an extra infielder, I think. So I don't know if you go the route of like a Yohan Moncada, Brian Anderson, somebody like that, a Gio Urshela type of guy who can play all over the infield. I know you have Luis Renifo, but Nate has mentioned it, and you have to be prepared for the worst. You need some decent depth there, and then I think you need to start building your pitching staff for the future as well. You got a lot of young guys. You need to go get a notable starter, a notable starter. I'm again with Nate on this. I do like Jack Flaherty. I do like a Max Fried type of guy. Um, so that's a lot of pieces. That's a lot of money. You start wondering, hey, can Angels maybe trade some of this young pitching to go get maybe a controllable outfielder, controllable infielder, that type of thing. Can you wait for the draft? I mean, if they have the number one overall pick, which we'll find out in December or January, if they have the number one overall pick and you think that hey, Jay Slaviolette's the future, all of a sudden there's your center fielder of the future. You know that he's going to be up maybe September next year, if not the beginning of 2026, and you have a really fun young super fun young core group of guys. Again, you can't guarantee that you're going to get Jay Slaviolette or anybody like that in the MLB draft because we're so early. But yeah, you're looking at this offseason. I think you need to go get some type of infielder that can play all over the infield, maybe on a 1 year super cheap deal, Jerkson Profar type of deal that the Padres signed him to. You're going to need a center fielder that plays really good defense unless you're trusting Mickey Moniak out there. Then you're going to need a starting pitcher, and then I know I've always said I don't like the way you built that spending on relievers is a thing, but you look at, I mean, are the Angels going to contend in 2025? Or do they go out and maybe sign a couple relievers to go trade in July? I mean, you saw what Carson, you saw what Carlos Estevez fetched in July. I mean, maybe you pull something like that off and you go sign a couple of those guys. Luis Garcia, same thing to a, inexpensive 1 year under $7-10 million deal. I know you can't guarantee those players are going to be good, but if you think you're not going to contend, you're going to win another 75 games and maybe not be buyers in July, it's kind of an interesting route to go and continue to build a farm system up. Anyway, it's not guaranteed ever, but it's interesting to think about.
See, my thought process is I think I fall more in line with Nate and you. I guess Jack Flaherty makes a lot of sense. He's already out in the area. I'd like to know more about Shane Bieber, where he's at. The only problem I have with him was his under the hood stuff. Not this year before he got hurt, but last year before was sliding. It was not all of a sudden he came back this year, pitched really well, and got hurt. So I don't know if the tweaks he made to be able to turn back around caused the injury or whatever. But I'm curious as to how much it'll cost because I don't think that from what we've seen in the past, I've only seen Artie really throw money at one free agent pitcher. And I'm talking like ungodly when that was Garrett Cole. So we can get him.
Mhm.
Okay. So I don't know how much he is willing to spend on pitching more than hitting. I mean, do they go after Bregman?
I
You hope
I
not.
would say no.
I would say no.
You do bring up an interesting point because they have been building the pitching farm system like they're not going to go spend in free agency when you think about it. Like it's just been like let's get as many pitchers as humanly possible. That's what it seems like in the trade market and development and things like that. So
The only problem is they haven't developed an ace from that. We've all thought that Detmers would be the ace. It's not pinning out right now. Who knows if it'll change? But there's nobody coming to the system who's an ace. They need an ace. One way or the other, they need an ace. Can they find someone who's close enough to an ace? And I think that comes through free agency. Corbin Burns is curious. We saw some of his under the hood numbers drop this year. So I don't know. Are they thinking about that? My thought process is you need someone who can build with in the future, but you don't want to overpay for someone who's way past their prime. I wonder that about Bregman, who's injury prone himself the last couple of years. So you have Anthony Rendon, who's much more injury prone. You're going to replace him potentially with someone who is somewhat injury prone, Alex Bregman. Do you really want that? I mean, all just to try and be competitive? It's just to me the definition of insanity, trying the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. Here's the second question. How willing are they to trade prospects or even veterans? Names he brings up as potentially guys you could trade: Taylor Ward, Renhefo, Tyler Anderson. Does it make sense to trade with a relatively thin free agent class? Jared?
um I tend to think that they're not going to trade away any of the veterans, at least right now. You mentioned Renifo, you mentioned Tyler Anderson and Taylor Ward. I don't see them trading those guys because they are key pieces to the Angels contending. Now that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I don't think it's out of the question to do that. I think that they trade. I think that it's more likely that they trade younger prospects type of thing. Like you see a Jack Hanowitz who's coming off a very good rookie season. A Sam Aldegari, somebody like that, because a lot of those pitching prospects that you have are very, very similar. Even a Reed Detmers who Perry didn't draft and hasn't been the dude yet. The guy that you anticipated him being very as consistent as you want him to be. I see them trading somebody like that away rather than those three veterans. It doesn't mean I don't want them to trade those guys away. I think that they should, but if they didn't trade them away in July and that value wasn't there, what makes you think that you're going to get anything similar back right now? And I know that's not the best way of thinking, but I mean, what's changing from July till now?
A lot. a
Mm.
lot. There are 29 teams that are willing to trade for players in the offseason. In July, there's probably 10 to 12. You're not going to see everyone that wants to go get a second baseman or a third baseman in July because maybe it's a team like Cincinnati. I know Cincinnati has a lot of infield depth, but maybe it's a team like that where it's like, well, we're not really in it. We're not going to go trade prospects for a guy when it doesn't make sense for us this year. Um, Boston, teams like that where it's like, hey, they aren't quite in it. They weren't willing to buy, but in the offseason, they're willing to buy because one, Luis Rengifo is cheap. And two, they're like Red already mentioned in this article, is a very, very thin free agent class. There's a lot of high end guys, and then there's not really that middle tier where Luis Rengifo would fit into that middle tier of guys. So I think you have to draw a line in the sand with Luis Rengifo. You're either going to extend him or you're trading him. Like going into the season with him on the roster doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because you have Christian Moore who's going to get every opportunity to make this roster out of spring. Um, and like you said, what is competitive? So I think it makes a lot of sense to trade him now. And then Tyler Anderson, like you always need starting pitching. Like I'm not a big Tyler Anderson fan, but I think you can move him in July. He's a guy where maybe we give Clausen 2 or 3 months, and if Clausen comes out and pitches really, really well, it's like, hey, we can move Anderson in July because you know we're you know 5 games under 500 or something like that. It's like we're not winning, we're not making it this year. Like move Anderson. Taylor Ward, same thing. I think he kind of fits in with that Rengifo market where it's like there's going to be teams that are willing to make trades now that weren't willing to make trades in July. Just because maybe a guy left in free agency that they weren't expecting. You know, maybe Arizona loses Jock Peterson. They're going, ooh, we didn't think we'd lose Jock. Arizona goes, hey, Taylor Ward makes sense for us. Or, things like that. The Marlins could always use offense, and they weren't willing to go trade for a guy like this in July. So I think that you have to be open to everything. And if they are not open to everything, then they're not really serious with trying to make this team as best as they possibly can.
All right. So Mike Trout. What about Mike Trout? What's the plan for him?
Is he
Nate?
healthy?
Well, we're gonna assume he's healthy here.
Uh-huh.
Starting with Nate first, then going to Jared.
Yeah, my stance on this hasn't changed. You got to move him to a corner, and then you need to build like he is not going to be on the team this year. Like I know he's going to be healthy. I know we hope he's going to be healthy. I know we hope he's going to play 100, 120, 140 games, whatever it is. But like you need to build that like he is not on the team. If you continue to build the team around Mike Trout, you are going to continue to look at your team in June, July, August, September, going, who in the heck is this guy playing this position? Because we've never heard of him. And he wasn't a top prospect. He wasn't anything. He's some random dude we found in the streets 3 weeks ago to come play because we built the team around two guys that are hurt and playing a combined, 60 games. It's just not realistic. It's not how you're going to build a winning team. So I think you move him to a corner, but you build like he is not on the team. Bring in some guys that can play his position for relatively cheap.
Jared.
Almost argue that you're built there. You just need to be better. I mean, you have depth. You have Mickey Moniak. You have Joe Adell. I mean, if Taylor Ward's still on the team, you have Mike Trout. You have 4 outfielders there. You need to get better. Including getting a center fielder that's going to hopefully play 150 games there. So yeah, you do need to get better. Yeah, I mean, you want Mike Trout to be healthy. That's in a sense, the biggest, it's key to your success. If Mike Trout's healthy, the Angels go when Mike Trout goes. And last 3 years when he hasn't been on the field, it's not the same. Even if Shohei Ohtani's on the field, it's still not the same to have that type of bat in the lineup, that type of guy there around the team on a daily basis. it's just not the same. So first off, you hope he's healthy. But yeah, you have to split time with him in different positions at this point. You know, you got to give him some time in left, some time maybe in right, whatever's easier for him to get. I know he's played a lot of left field, and you can still give him time in center field. I mean, he's still quick. He's still good. You know, he's the guy who's played the most center field probably at Angel Stadium in Angels history, probably, I would assume. I mean, minus Aaron Erstad, maybe. There might be a couple guys that have played some more center field than him, but you can still give him time in center field. But yeah, like Nate said, you have to assume that he's gonna play 70 games and you have to find out a way to, in a sense, replace Mike Trout, which is not easy to do.
Especially since they don't have a center fielder on the roster right now, on the active roster. That's concerning to me in terms of, unless you want to count Mickey Moniak, right? I mean that
I'd count Mickey Moniak. I think that defensively he can play center field. The bat's not the same, but I mean he's a better defender in center field than Mike Trout. But you don't want him playing 150 games in center field. I mean, you take the David Fletcher approach in center field, the one that I wanted them to do with David Fletcher. You're gonna have to play five different guys in center field, and that you actually have to have a team that all plays center field. Like if Joe Adele could play center field, Taylor Ward can play center field, you know, like in a sense. So if you can get 30 games out of each of those guys in center field, it's okay. But then that's assuming that that's the best case scenario too. So you just got to go get somebody that can play center field and play center field well. And I don't know if he's on the free agent market. I don't know if you can trade for him. I really don't. It's center field's not a deep position. It's not a good position either. There's not a lot of talent in center field. So yeah, that's why I think the Angels are going to draft somebody to play center field here pretty soon.
I'm wondering also in terms of just again, this is kind of like the traumatized Angel fan. Remember what happened when Aber Pujols signed, and almost immediately we saw the dip in the numbers and the all the leg injuries over the years kind of caught up with him. And it seems like that's what's happening with Mike Trout. Even when he's healthy, his swing hasn't been right for a couple of years now. Hence why he was hitting like 220 when he got hurt. So I'm wondering how much of that is playing with the Angels' minds as well. They've already been there and done that with Pujols. It was never the same. And I mean, I guess if you can get 25, 30 home runs out of Mike Trout and hitting 250, you'd be happy with it. You'd be happy with it at this point. Okay. But that's just in the back of my mind as well as where does he fit in as he declines? And that's going to happen no matter what. He's declining. He's past his prime. How much the decline is what I'm wondering about. Now, Jared, this is more for you, bud. I because the prospects are up your alley. Which prospects are ready to step up? He mentioned Dana, Algari, Christian Moore, Matthew Lugo, Klassen, Johnson, Cortez. Which ones do you think are ready?
To to play a role in competing next year, I think that you put that tag on Christian Moore. I think you put that tag on Christian Moore. Like the only legitimate prospect that's gonna make a huge difference is probably Christian Moore next year. Now, I mean, George Clausen looks really good. If he can be a guy that looked how he did in his last start when he threw 7 no-hit innings or 6 no-hit innings, 15 strikeouts, something crazy like that, then he could definitely be a big piece. We saw some glimpses of Samuel Aldagary's stuff be very, very good. Jack Hanwitz looked really, really good. I know the analytical numbers aren't the best for him. He doesn't strike out a lot of guys, but I mean he does get people out. I mean, there's something to say there on that note. Chris Cortez could be very interesting. He's probably a bullpen piece. We haven't even seen him play minor league baseball. Ryan Johnson's another guy who could be a quick mover that might be a big piece for the Angels, maybe in the starting rotation at some point. But other than that, I don't know if Matthew Lugo plays a huge role. I mean, are you gonna say that Matthew Lugo plays such a big role in center field or in the outfield that that you don't have to go sign somebody? Like that's not. I don't think you can do something like that. I think you still need to go get pieces. So long-winded answer. I think the only guy that really makes a huge difference is Christian Moore, but there are pieces there that could make, Jack Hanawit like differences where they come out and, make 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, good starts for the Angels down the road. Now, Christian Moore is the only big piece though.
Nate?
Yeah, it's hard. There's really nobody down there that you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a guy that's going to save us at this position. We saw Caden Dana come up, who Jared didn't mention, but
Yeah.
he even could be a guy that gets moved. Alda Gary, same thing, like ups and downs, whatever. But yeah, Christian Moore is this farm system, and that's what the Angels need to rely on is Christian Moore being a very good player and be able to hit at the top of the lineup and be a good player if they want to compete. If he's a bad player, and it's just going to be tough for them to compete.
Can I throw one more in there? Like nobody is really thinking about Reed Detmers. Like that's another big piece. Like I know
He's
that
not a prospect.
I know he's not a prospect, but like he's still young enough. Like that's a big young piece that's a core part of your rotation. Like I know he's what he debut 2.5 years ago or something like that. So I mean he could still be a prospect for some. He's still young enough, 24, 25 now. But yeah, I mean that's a big piece. Reed Detmers is
We all
probably the
know he
big
has the stuff, dude. We all know he
yeah.
has the stuff. But what if the Angels have messed him up? What if, man, heaven forbid, he winds up getting moved and he goes somewhere else and puts together, which has happened. Players go
What did you
somewhere else
get?
put together.
What'd you get in return for him? I mean, Brandon Marsh looks pretty good in Philly right now. So I mean, Logan Hoppy's been good in Anaheim. So
I mean,
if it's that type of trade,
I'm just saying you don't want to see him go, but maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe that's what happens is they move him to give him a chance somewhere else. My question at the root of
I'm
it
trying to
is,
think
did
of a
the
trade that
Angels
works.
spoil this guy? And I mean by like spoiled milk. Did they mess this guy up?
I'm trying to think of a trade that might work for Reed Detmers, like a Brandon Marsh type of trade. I mean, that's something you probably think about at some point. Maybe I don't know. I mean, is there an outfielder that Jared Clinic type of guy? It's not Jared Clinic, but like that type of guy who wasn't very good. It's I mean, Reed Detmers has been decent. Like I don't know. Like yeah, you can think about it that way, but I mean, every single time, are you upset at the Brandon Marsh trade?
No,
No, no, not
no.
really. You know, like so those trades don't happen very often, but I mean, the wheels start turning on like who could you get for Reed Detmers if you think that his time is up here and somebody else can fix him. I don't know. I mean, you maybe look at Tampa. Like, does Tampa have that type of prospect that's been okay? You know, like I don't know. Yankees, you get Jason Dominguez, maybe. I don't know, that type of guy.
Or
Mets.
maybe the Angels can go get somebody who can develop players. Just would be nice. I'm just saying. Anyways, Anthony Rendon, what's his role? I'm gonna copy Nate because I'm lazy right now. Same as Mike Trout. You treat him like just what you were saying before. I'm in total agreement with Nate. This is from previous episodes when he said it. You treat him like you don't think he's gonna be there. You plan if he's not, and if he's there and he doesn't, he plays well, great. Other than that, you're not gonna find someone to take money on for him. That it? Anything different on Rendon?
No.
Yeah, you take the Trout approach with him.
Okay, one last thing. One last thing. I don't know if you guys saw the graphic. The four league championship series teams, all three of the four of them, payrolls above 250, two over 300 million. Then there's the Guardians at 140 million. The disparity that we see. Question: is it possible for the Angels to compete with no farm system at less than $200 million in salary?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, give people hope. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is like one of the first years that this has happened. So I'm not in on the spending million. Like when was the last time the top three teams that spent the most money? Granted, the Angels were probably in that mix, but it doesn't happen very often. It's a good combination of development and also spending money for sure. I mean, look at the Dodgers, one of the best developing teams. The Yankees, one of the best developing teams, and the Mets have a lot of young, good talent on that team that they have developed. I wouldn't say they're very good at developing, but they've done very
They
good.
did enough.
Yeah, they've done very good in that side of stuff. And then you look at the Guardians who spent just enough to to go out there. I mean, yeah, that's the Guardians are fun, man. They're different.
They
They also had a an amazing route to the playoffs. They got to play the White Sox a lot of times, and then they get to play an AL Central team to get to the ALCS. So no, the Angels can't compete with the prospects they have and the money they're spending. It's impossible. I think Jared didn't hear the one part where you said prospects, because if the Angels develop well, of course you can make the playoffs with what they're spending, but they haven't been able to develop well, and they haven't been able to bring in a good amount of prospects. I mean, it's one prospect a year. It's their first round pick. He gets ranked very highly. They call him up early, and that's where they're at. So until the Angels can really build a farm system or can guess right um, on free agents, they're not going to be able to compete. Kansas City's the one team who's been able to guess right on free agents. And then you look at other teams that have been able to guess right on prospects. So no, this team can't compete with where they're at right now.
All right, but there you go. Follow us on Twitter at Talking Halos. Follow Nate at Nate Green 34, Jared _Tims, and me at DC Apollo. In the meantime, we're out of here. See you soon.